Hello YouTube, my name is Alex. Welcome back to the Lifting Nomad. In today's video, we're going to talk about should you take a sabbatical, work break, gap year, year off, time off, whatever you want to call it. Basically a break from work and real life in order to travel and see the world. Without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, so if you're like me and you've decided, hey, maybe it's worth thinking about taking some time off of work, school, whatever, and seeing the world. I think COVID put life in perspective for a lot of people and made us realize just how precious our time is. And me personally, based in Toronto, I lost like 2 years of my prime, basically just trapped at home playing video games. And it was really saddening, really depressing, of course. I don't want to get down that rabbit hole, but it really humbled me to understanding that life is precious and we should savor every moment and try to live our life to the fullest. And it definitely solidified my approach that I'm not someone who wants a mortgage, a white picket fence, fancy car, or Rolex. Those things never really interested me. I've wanted kind of my whole life to do things that were fun and interesting and meet new people and eat new foods and see, far out places. And travel allowed me to do that. So when you look at a sabbatical or time off or a year off or a gap year, I think it's really important to understand where you are in your life. Are you 19 years old or 18 years old, just graduated high school and thinking about going to university? I think this is, in hindsight, one of my biggest regrets. I don't have too many in life, but I think I should have taken a year off and traveled. I should have been smarter with my money in high school. Not to blame anyone. I think it's just kind of the way I grew up. My family didn't travel too much abroad. Like I was fortunate to go to the States and have a passport and all that, but we really didn't travel to cool places. Like I met a girl in the Algarve this summer and her family had taken her to like Shanghai and New Zealand and Australia and South America and Africa growing up, and she'd been to like 80 countries, right? So she had obviously very, very fortunate growing up, but also she had just a broader perspective of life. Like she was, her family was from Pakistan and then Tanzania. So she's been to like some pretty cool places and just spoke like 4 languages and spoke Spanish and just had a lot of interesting stories to tell. And I realized, I've done some cool things, but there's still a lot more that I want to do in this world. So in hindsight, I think taking a gap year is what I should have done. When I graduated high school, I should have had I had tons of money. I was living under my parents' house. They were buying groceries and paying for most of my shit. And I still came out of high school with like no dollars to my name because I didn't think of it. I didn't plan for it. And I hope that this sort of content can resonate with people who are younger than me and in a position similar to what I was back then. And a few takeaways, right? That gap year is really, really powerful. You could take 6 months off or even not even go too crazy like that. Graduate high school in June, you start university or college in September or August. Take like 2 months, take 2 months or 3 months and go travel. Absolutely. I think I should have done that. In hindsight, I would have probably done a full year if I knew what I knew now and just gone to like Australia. And they have the young worker visa. If you're from a Commonwealth country, you can really easily start up and work in Australia for a year. And I would have traveled to like Bali and Japan and parts of China and New Zealand, Australia. There's some pretty cool places down there that are accessible. That's what I would have done. I think taking a gap year is immensely important for a few different reasons. Looking at the world on a global scale right now, you can see just how much hate and ignorance there is out there. And I feel like if everyone had that global perspective, like this girl from the Algarve, who you've seen different countries, you've seen different cultures, you've seen different food and different perspectives, I think it would eliminate a lot of that hate and give people that sort of global dynamic presence of we're all in this together at the end of the day, right? We're all human beings no matter where you're from, and we are one sort of race, right? So if we had the ability to see how one another lives, I think it would help kind of fill in those gaps, right? It's a really interesting opportunity. And if you plan for it, you can definitely do it. I realize not everyone's gonna have the opportunity to do it if you're supporting your own household or supporting loved ones. But in hindsight, that's what I would have done given I had that opportunity to do it again. Now, the second sort of stage you could do is things like a gap year after university. So after you've actually got your degree, let's say you want to potentially travel or even the summers in university. I think that's probably the most realistic thing that people can do is between university semesters, you have like 4 months where you could easily travel because typically that's when you move back home to your parents anyways. So if you're working throughout the year, you could be doing like a bartending or a serving job that makes a lot of cash, putting that money away like $5,000 and then taking that 4 months between years to travel. And I think that would definitely help put you in a really unique place to telling stories. like now that I'm interviewing for these like more professional jobs that pay a ton of money, I think really the edge a lot of the time I have is I have interesting things to talk about. You know, like I've traveled to 32 countries, and I was a borderline professional gamer. Now I'm pretty washed up. And it's interesting talking points. Like so many people kind of just live like a mundane, normal life. And then when you interview, that's all you have to talk about, right? Is your mundane, normal shit. Like you play like sports in your local area, or you play tennis on the weekends or golf on the weekends. Like, and great for you. That's what you want to do. But if you want to kind of have an interesting life, I think you need to do more than that. I've been re-listening to Bob Iger's Ride of a Lifetime audiobook, and I read the book when it first came out, but now that Bob's back at the helm of Disney, I thought it was worth revisiting. And in one of the early chapters, he talks about something his wife, I guess his first wife or second wife, I don't remember how many times he's been married, but something she says to him, and it's when he gets his first job offer to move from New York to Los Angeles to basically lead all of ABC programming. He was going to become the president really, really young on in his career. And when he got that offer, his wife said to him, "Life's meant to be lived as an adventure. So if you're not taking the adventurous path, you're not really living." And that stuck with me. I listened to that this week, and it really hit home with me that life is an adventure. It's meant to be lived. And I think exploring and growing outside of our comfort zone is what sets apart excellence from benchmark, right? You look at someone like Bob, who took Disney from the biggest, some of the biggest acquisitions in their history, from Marvel to LucasArts. Like, these are massive, massive organizations launching Disney Plus. Like, that was all really his responsibility that did some amazing things for Disney. He launched Shanghai Disney. Like, it's a really cool book to listen to, and a lot of takeaways for me that I hope you can, kind of resonate with some of those concepts there as well. But the gap year, potentially after university, or the semesters in between, definitely worth exploring if you have the opportunity to do so. And the final category, I think, for a lot of people like myself who are maybe in your 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever it is potentially taking a sabbatical. So my family, again, they never really took that sort of vacation. A lot of my family hasn't been abroad or in South America. And for me, that was really like a game changer. I wanted to see the world, and a sabbatical for me is absolutely on the table. So I'm 28 at the time of this video. Who knows what time you're gonna be watching this? That's the great part about YouTube. But at some point in my life, I'm gonna take a sabbatical. I'd like to say 3 years is what I'm budgeting for, where I will take a year off of work. I will have saved enough money and have planned enough where I'm gonna take a year and go to Australia and New Zealand and Southeast Asia and places that I've wanted to go my whole life and haven't had the ability to do. And a sabbatical is just amazing. I think in this day and age, a career break on your resume doesn't have the impact it used to. It used to look like you were lazy, or you got laid off, or you weren't doing anything. But really the perception has changed over the last little bit with COVID, especially, and the inflation and the economy and people living at home longer. A sabbatical isn't viewed as negatively. Lots of people are living at home longer. Lots of people are taking career breaks and then literally putting on their LinkedIn, "I took a year off and traveled the world," and then listing the countries they were in. One of my coworkers just started, her and her husband took a year off, went to like 15 countries during like the kind of end of COVID, let's say, where countries were starting to open up, and she was navigating like quarantine in each one and different testing and vaccine protocols in different countries. And despite that, she's come back to work hot, and she started off with a bang and doing really, really well. And then her and I met one of her first days. I'm relatively new at my company as well. Her and I met and we synced, and we had a lot to talk about, and we got to share stories of travel. And then because of the experience I've had traveling personally, I've worked opportunities where people are based in like Portugal, and I got to talk shop with them about Lisbon and what neighborhood they're in, and how much they love living in Portugal and what's their favorite restaurant, that kind of thing. And then recently I worked at one of our customers was from Argentina, so Buenos Aires, and I got to speak Spanish with them and talk about how I'm going to Argentina, and talk about the economy and the weather and how their winter is essentially our summer and our summer is their winter. And it just gives you some interesting stories to tell, I think. And at the end of the day, when the game's over, both the king and the pawn go back into the same box. So I want to look back on my life, and I've done some pretty cool things. So a sabbatical for me, absolutely without question, something I'm going to do. But if you want to do it, that's really just a decision you have to make. Do you want to prioritize your finances and take a sabbatical, or do you want to have kids and stay at home and do that sort of thing? Really up to you. You don't have to do one or the other. I see lots of people traveling into their 50s, 60s, 70s after that's all done. Totally fair. For me, it's just a different priority. I want to do it now while I'm young and have the ability to do so. So that's pretty much the video. Talking about Should you take a gap year? Should you take some time off? Should you take a sabbatical? I think absolutely it's one of the best things you can do for yourself. But what do you think? Worth it? Not worth it? Would you do it again? What would you change if you could go back and tell your younger self? Something I think about a lot when I'm making these videos. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Alex. Welcome back to Lifting Nomad. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.